Video, I will be doing a demo for how to do a lit search, and for you, that means how to begin working on assignment 2. The first step is to read some basic information about your topic from a reputable health website. Let's say at this stage that I have a pretty good idea of what my topic is, but I don't have a very specific research question yet. I'm interested in learning about public health programs to prevent sexually transmitted diseases among adolescents. Are there such programs? How well do they work? What types of methods have people tried to convince teens to practice safe sex? These are some of the questions that are swirling around my mind, and I would like to learn some more before I embark upon my scientific lit search. So let's go to one of our reputable health websites. And in fact, we're already here at Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the cdc.org website. So let's just begin by browsing some topics. Diseases and conditions, that's what I'm thinking might be a most fruitful place for me to search. And here we have a link to sexually transmitted diseases. This seems like a good place to start. And you can just sort of browse and see what kinds of topics they highlight. LGBT issues, STDs during pregnancy, and luckily for us, adolescents and young adults is one of the main topics here. So let's go there and take a look. So let's browse a little bit and see what information we have. So you'll see that some of the information is broken up into a few topics. We have highlights, we have webinars, podcasts, and videos, and we have reports. So it looks like there's quite a bit of information. We have fact sheets and brochures. This is a really good place to start. I will not be browsing through all of this with you because I want to get through all of the steps and just let you explore on your own. But let's say we go to one of the first links. Oh, and by the way, let's just read this quick little intro together before we go to the first link. While STDs affect individuals of all ages, they take a particularly heavy toll on young people. CDC estimates that youth ages 15 to 24 make up just over 1/4 of the sexually active population, but account for half of the 20 million new sexually transmitted infections that occur in the US each year. So that's very promising. It seems like we're onto a very good topic because there's clearly scientifically and socially relevant material because this is a very prevalent issue for young people. And we know that, so now we know STDs are fairly common among teens. So it seems like there is certain room for exploring preventative methods. So let's take a closer look at what we've got. Let's go to this first link. Lots of information here again. Just scrolling a little bit, looking at screening recommendations. Okay, that's not exactly what we're interested in because we have more of a prevention question in mind. Okay, primary prevention recommendations. Okay, so we have some bullet points here about the vaccine. For HPV, we have the HBV, HAV vaccines. That's all really interesting, but I'm mostly interested in behavioral prevention methods, and it looks like the last bullet here is on that topic. Okay, browsing a little bit more. Okay, interesting. So interactive counseling approaches such as high-intensity behavioral counseling and motivational interviewing are effective STD/HIV prevention strategies. That's interesting. I have never heard of high-intensity behavioral counseling before, so I'm going to file that in the back of my mind and look out for those keywords when I do my search. Okay, so in reality, you'll be doing a lot more than I just did here, browsing and reading. But again, I want to get through all of the steps with you, so I'll skip over a lot of the nitty-gritty and go on to the next step. So now that you know a thing or two about your topic, we can start doing the real lit search. So we will now go to a reputable database. My personal favorite is PubMed because this has a lot of articles. Usually I found that any study I find through another database, I can also find it here. So this is a really good place to start. So let's see. The search bar at the top is where you can start typing in your search words, and your search words should be some of the highlights that you read from your initial read up on the CDC website or the WHO website, just based on the knowledge that you currently have. Okay, the first type of article we're looking for is a review article, but let's just type in some basic search terms. Let's say adolescent STD behavioral prevention, and let's see what we get. Okay, so we've got over 1,600 results. That is a lot. And that may seem like too overwhelming of a number, and how do you even get started? You can't possibly read all of those titles even, but that's okay. Don't worry. We can, at this point, just narrow it down to only review articles by going to the left here under article types and clicking review. And voila, we're down to only 85 hits, and most of those hits will be irrelevant too. So the reason that we're looking for a review article at this point and not any other type of article like individual studies is that reading a review article first will save you a lot of work. Because in a review article, basically someone has already done a lit search for you. And so if you start there, you can just build on what they've got already instead of reinventing the wheel. So I like to say work smart instead of working hard. Maybe you need to do both, but let's at least save you some time. Okay, so let's take a look at what we've got. The association of HPV. Okay, so that's not exactly what we're interested in. What about this one? Impact of health education transmitted via social media or text messaging on adolescent and young adult risky sexual behavior. A systematic review of the literature. That sounds perfect. So let's take a look at this study. You can click on it and that will take you to the abstract for the study. The abstract is essentially a brief summary of the study, and by skimming it over, we get a sense of what they did in this review, which is actually a systematic review. That means the authors went through a very rigorous search process, more so than what we're doing here now, actually. And they did that to make absolute sure that they wouldn't miss any studies that are pertinent to their research question. So this is very good. We know they did a thorough job. And these types of systematic review papers are a fantastic place to start. Okay, just by skimming, we can see that this review found preliminary evidence that using social media to communicate to teens about safe sex can increase knowledge about STD prevention. That's good. That's a very promising start. But even better, the authors believe there are limitations to these studies and there's further research needed. Perfect. That's where your research proposal could potentially come in to build on this growing field, this topic that already has some traction, but to also then address the limitations and future directions that exist. So let's save this article for our literature review. For many of the articles that you find on PubMed, you can actually get the full text by going to the top right corner here under full text links. And usually there are a couple of icons for you to choose from where you can get the full text. So let's go there. Here we go. So we have our full text of the review paper now. And I like to usually read it in PDF format. So that's what I'm going to open up now. On the right side, there's a link to that. And at this point, you have the full text. I would recommend you read this paper thoroughly to better understand your topic and also better narrow down your research question and know where to go from there. And the next step, after you've done this, is to find the most important studies reviewed in this review paper and read those in more detail in turn. So because this is a systematic review paper, it will be nicely organized. In fact, it will usually have a table listing all of the studies that they reviewed, along with the most pertinent bullet points for the study itself, and the design, the population, all the information that you need to know at a glance. So let's see if we can find that table in this systematic review. Yep, here we go. So this is table 1, and it looks to span several pages, listing each and every single one of the studies that they reviewed. Great. So by this point, you should have a better idea of what your specific research question will be. So maybe you've narrowed down your interest to a specific population of teenagers, such as those living in the United States, or maybe you've narrowed down your interest to a more specific group of diseases, such as HIV/AIDS or some other type of STDs. Maybe you've narrowed down your interest to a more specific exposure, or in this case, treatment. Maybe you only want to look at internet-delivered prevention programs. So, and these are the things that you should be figuring out as you're reading this review article. So, in any case, whatever you've narrowed down your research question to, pick out the studies from the systematic review that are most relevant to your interests, and then read them in more detail. Okay, so I'm going to pick out, I saw a study earlier that was interesting. Okay, yes, this one. Facebook site, education regarding sexual history, communication. This sounds really interesting to me because by now I'm very interested in social media and how that's used to target STD prevention in teens. So I'm going to look at this study. But how do you find that study? Where do you go to get the full text? A quick pro tip for you is to scroll down all the way to the bottom of this review article where they have their references list. And let's see, we can see here that this Bull et al. 2012 study is reference number 18. Okay, so let's go down all the way to reference number 18 in the references list right here. Yep, this is the Bull et al. 2012 paper. And I'm just going to copy paste the title. I'm going to copy the title and I'm going to go to Google Scholar for this task, which is scholar.google.com. Paste in that title, and voila, here we have the paper we were looking for. And luckily, this paper is also available for free from NIH. So as you can see here on the right, there's a link provided, so we can just go get it without having to go through any firewalls or paying for the article. All right, let's see. Okay, let's see if we can download this as well. The PDF link is right here. Great. If we're not as lucky and we don't have a free full text available for the study that you want to read, well, not having access to a free copy is not enough reason to exclude the paper from your review. So we should include all papers that seem to be relevant, even if they're not immediately freely available on the internet. But don't worry, your school's library probably has a subscription to the journal, and through them you can get a full text fairly easily. So for example, let's say we wanted to look at, okay, going back to our original review article, let's say we wanted to find this study, the effect of health education through the internet on university female students' hepatitis B knowledge and cognition. That is quite a mouthful, so let's copy that and again go to Google Scholar. And we see the paper here, but there is no link on the right to take you to a free copy. And that's okay, because we can get the full text from the library. So let's just copy the title again and go to library.rwu.edu. And this will take you to the front page, the home page of the library, where you'll see this search bar called OneSearch. OneSearch will pretty much do the job for most of the searches you might potentially do. So let's just try that first. Paste your title into the search bar and see what we get. And there it is, the article we were looking for. And as you can see, here is a copy of the full text available for you to download. Oh, we need to log in. That's fine. Okay, perfect. So now we have the full text to the study that we originally could not find on Google Scholar. So you can repeat this process, referring always back to the review article that you read in detail, and go through and find all of the studies that it reviewed that you find interesting and that are relevant to your topic. So by the end, you should have a handful of really solid studies. However, you're not quite done, because next you have to make sure that you're not missing any important studies that have been published since this review article came out. So we can go back to PubMed. Here we are. Maybe we'll go to the original search results here. And here we can start looking for articles based on our more narrowed down search questions and we'll be looking specifically in the past 2 years, since the review that we read by Jones et al. Is from 2014. So in the past 2 years, new studies might have come out that Jones and colleagues did not have a chance to review. So before, remember how we clicked on reviews to narrow it down? Well, let's also add clinical trial to that list. Okay, so now we have quite a few more studies, and sort by most recent, yes. So then now, in the first few pages of the search results, we should be seeing some 2015 studies, and once again, I'm going to skip the tedious going through each of the titles to see if they are a relevant phase. I'll let you do that on your own. However, another pro tip for you, instead of just doing the PubMed, if you want to go a faster route, or maybe just to cover your bases even more, we can again use Google Scholar. Where is that? Okay, here we are, Google Scholar. However, I would only recommend this if you already have a handful of good studies. The bulk of the studies that you find and ultimately review should not be found through Google Scholar, because it tends to be more hodgepodge and it's harder to wade through the tens of thousands of hits that you usually get from there. However, if you're just filling in gaps in your literature search, like making sure you've caught up with the most recent studies, Google Scholar is an easy tool and I recommend it for that purpose. Okay, so let's try searching social media STD prevention for adolescents, teenagers, young adults. Typing in some few actual words there just to make sure I'm covering my bases. Wow, 20,900 results. Okay. We need to maybe help narrow this down. And by the way, I'm making this search term and search process look a little bit easier than it might end up being in real life, because spoiler alert, I've already actually tried different combinations of search terms behind the scenes. So usually you'll have to play around with the search terms to find what combination gives you enough results, but not too overwhelmingly many, and also giving you results that seem to be on point. So for cases like this, where you get too many results and you don't really know where to start, I recommend you going to the drop-down arrow in the search bar and playing around with the advanced settings here. So for example, since we're only looking for the most recent studies, we can set the date range to be 2014 to 2016. So we're only looking at the past 2 years. And also, since I'm not really interested in teen pregnancy, which is a whole different issue, I'm going to put pregnancy into the without the words field. That way, the Google Scholar will specifically exclude studies that talk about pregnancy. And I want at least one of the terms about my specific population, so I'm going to move that down here. I want at least one of the words to be adolescents, teenagers, or young adults. Get rid of the 4 and see if this is a little bit better. Okay, 9,000 something results. That's much better. That's still a lot, but gives you some a slightly narrower scope for you to browse, right? Okay, so again, I'm going to skip some of the more boring parts like scrolling through and browsing titles, seeing what you're interested in, seeing what else seems to be relevant. Basically, after you've done a good amount of browsing and you have a solid handful of studies saved up and a solid handful of ideas in your head about what your research proposal can contribute to this field of study, you're ready to put it all together into an annotated bibliography. For the step of actually writing the annotated bibliography, I will be very brief and then refer you to a page from the Roger Williams Library. You will find the link below this video. So here we are on that page, and it gives you a very nice description of what an annotated bibliography should look like, how to go about the process in a much more succinct way than I've taken you through in this video. And very helpfully, you'll see on the bottom examples of what it should look like and what it shouldn't look like. Okay, to verbally sum it up, you want to end up with a list of APA-style references like this one reference for each of the studies that you found. And beneath each reference, you want to have a brief description of the study. So about this length, a small paragraph. Feel free to write it in bullet points, but do make sure that you're being thorough in your description. And this description should include research question that's covered by the study, the hypotheses that the authors made, a quick review of the methods, the main results, the main takeaway, and the limitations and future directions or questions. Don't worry, this list of requirements is inside the description of assignment 2 itself, so you can always refer to it as you're working. Importantly, you need to not only summarize, but evaluate the studies you found, just like we talked about in previous parts of this module. For example, I don't want to just hear what a study was about, describing the population and the study question. That's all great, but I also want to hear that the relationship found between the variables was correlational or causational, big or small. Also, perhaps you want to critique the study for having a small sample size, or maybe they didn't really have a good way of measuring their outcomes. Or maybe you think the study was particularly well done and you were really impressed with the way they measured their outcomes or the way that they controlled for confounding variables. You can certainly specify what you liked or didn't like or thought was well done or not well done as part of your evaluation of the study. So more specific instructions for assignment 2 are posted also beneath this video. If you have any questions about it or the process of conducting a lit search, please feel free to email me or ask the class at large in the questions forum. Remember that homework assignments are graded for completion. So although I strongly urge you to put your best effort into this assignment to make your own life much easier later on when it comes to writing your final research proposal, don't be afraid of taking some risks with your topic or don't be afraid of messing up your lit search. I'll be reading each of your assignment 2s and I will point you in the right direction if needed. Okay, best of luck. And don't forget that there's a list of very useful resources at the bottom of this module to take you to the places you need to go to conduct your lit search.